Okay, take number 3. So I learned the hard way what learning to look at the lens and not the little screen on the side means. It means that I don't see the little red dot in the corner and I don't pay attention to whether I push the record button. So this is a retake. This is Daniel Gregg speaking, and I'm looking into the lens, but I also got to check the screen over here just to make sure everything is good. Trying to get into the habit of looking at the lens, so I'm looking the viewer in the face and not off to the side. It's a bad habit to break. Okay, so this is a retake or a redo of a video I did years ago, I think more than 10 years ago, detailing the 70 sabbatical years that Israel did not observe. Okay, so when Israel entered into the land, they were to keep the land Sabbath. Okay, but they didn't keep all of the land Sabbaths. They only kept the land Sabbaths while they were in covenant and following the true God. When they were chasing after the idols of other nations, then they didn't observe the law like they should, okay, and they neglected it. So all of those sabbatical years and the periods when they were following idols, okay, and when God sent foreign nations in to oppress them, to get them back on the right track, all those land Sabbath in those years are counted against them in the 70. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to survey those 70 land Sabbaths they didn't observe. Okay, and this is important not just from the standpoint of biblical chronology. It's important for understanding where the 70, what is the reasoning behind the 70 years of exile in Babylon, and why they had to pay off 70 years in the first place. And this is also important for understanding Daniel 9 and the structure of the sabbatical years in the prophetic passage for the future. Okay, it helps us understand why there are gaps. Okay, and why some sabbatical years were counted in one place and not counted in another place. Okay, so I'm going to go in the house here, and we're going to go through it year by year. All right. So I don't have the scroll anymore. That's all I do, but it's stuffed up in the attic. I haven't made a new one with the revisions. Okay, I've only updated the book. So this is the 7th edition here, and we'll turn the camera around. Okay. Turn the camera around as I put my glasses back on here. And okay, so I'll lay a little context for this. The Exodus was in 1632 BC, and they entered the land 40 years later in 1592 BC. Okay, and then they started keeping the sabbatical and Jubilee years then. Okay, so the first oppression is the king of Mesopotamia. Okay, and that was for 8 years. And you can see here the BC years are in the leftmost column, year of the world column, and then I've got the 7-year cycle column, the sabbatical year column here. Okay, and this is a Jubilee column here. The shading here is a seasons column, 4 seasons per year. Okay, and here's the one sabbatical year they didn't observe in the 8 years of oppression by the king of Mesopotamia. All right, continuing the survey here. I'll turn the camera back around here. Okay, we were talking about the king of Mesopotamia. One sabbatical year that they didn't observe, labeled neglected sabbatical year. Okay, adjacent to the 8 years of the king of Mesopotamia. Okay, so the judge Othniel delivered them from the king of Mesopotamia for 40 years. Okay, and in this period we don't count up any sabbatical years. we don't count up any more years of sin. It just starts at 8 there. The sin of iniquity, 390 of iniquity. We don't count those. Okay. If we come across a Jubilee year, it will count as a land Sabbath they didn't observe, along with the 7th year sabbatical year. So when I say land Sabbath, I'm using this term on purpose to include both the Jubilee and the sabbatical year. Okay, so after the 40 years of Othniel, they rebelled again, and God sent Eglon of Moab to oppress them for 18 years. And during that 18 years, we have sabbatical years 2, 3, and 4 that they didn't observe. Okay, and then they got a deliverer sent, Ehud. Okay. 390 years of iniquity. We stopped counting those at the end. And then during the 80 years that followed Ehud, we don't count sabbatic 7th years or Jubilee years. We count all the land. We don't count any land Sabbaths during the period that the land had rest and they were in fellowship. Okay, Shamgar at the end of the 80 years. Flip over the page here. Okay. At the end of the 80 years, they sinned again, and he turned them over to Jabin of Hatzor. Archaeologists dug up that town in Israel. Okay, and they served him for 20 years. Okay, and then we have years 5, 6, and 7. Okay, and then we get Deborah for 40 years. So we're not counting anything. Midian, 7 years for the oppression of Midian. Number 8, sabbatical year here. Okay, 40 years for Gideon. We're not counting anything during those years. Okay. Somebody's making dessert. You want to see the dessert? See the dessert? You want to see the dessert maker? That's the dessert maker. Okay. So that's Sabbath preparations going on. Hopefully I can get this video off before Sabbath starts. Okay, so Abimelech, 3-year oppression. 1 sabbatical year, number 9 there. Okay, followed by Tola, Jair, not counting anything. Oh, Ammonites, that's an oppression. We're counting up year 10, 11, 12, 13, and a Jubilee is included here. Okay, counting, okay, and then we get some minor judges. Jephthah, Ebzon, not counting during that period of the minor judges. Elon, Abdon, okay. Then we get the first Philistine oppression for 40 years. So that's the black column, 40 years. And then over a little bit to the right, we see the land Sabbaths they didn't observe. Okay, so go back to the top here. Year 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, then we get Eli. So again, we're not counting. We're not counting years of sin anymore. Okay, Eli is the yellow column. That was for 40 years. Eli, there's the end of Eli there. Okay, so Eli falls backwards and breaks his neck, and he dies when he hears the news that the Philistines have attacked. And they came and they destroyed Shiloh, and the Philistines oppressed him for another 20 years. Okay, so we're counting sabbatical years 20, 21, 22, and okay, they just missed that one there, right off the end. They just missed it. And they missed one right at the beginning, too. There's only, my pointer there, there's only these two here. 22, 21 and 22. Okay, and then we get a period of time where they're in fellowship with God under Samuel and Saul. Saul's second year is a Jubilee text. It's 1 Samuel 13, 1 through 3, but they were keeping them. Blow the trumpet throughout all the land. Okay, David. There we go, David. Okay. His two reigns, his reign in Hebron and Jerusalem. Okay, Solomon. Short co-regency there with Solomon and David. Okay. And Solomon. Okay, even though Solomon dabbled in idols himself, the whole nation didn't follow his lead. So we're not counting those years. Okay. Eventually the whole nation did follow his lead. It says for 3 years they walked according to the law during the reign of Rehoboam and Jeroboam. And then they turned away from it. Okay, Jeroboam introduced the Baal altar, and he changed the feast. Okay, Chronicles tells us that this was after a period of 3 years. So we start counting up the sin of Israel again. Okay, now an important point here is that the sin of Israel and Judah are tallied separately. So as long as Israel is in the land, the northern kingdom, we count according to that. Only when Judah is independent do we count any years of sin for Judah. Okay, that's why there's so few years of sin for Judah and so many for Israel. Okay, so Jeroboam introduced the idols, and all the kings following him were idolaters. So we start counting year 22, 24, 25, 26, 27, adjacent to these two kings of Israel. Okay, there's another one there, 28. Okay, testing. All right, 25. Oh, why did I? Oh, because this page repeats. That's why. In fact, it says somewhere on the page. Yeah, there. These two pages repeat, right? There. Okay, so that's why it did it to me. This had to do between a conversion of the old book and the new book, and the fact that it was certain files. So all designed in Microsoft Excel originally. Okay, years 26, 27, and then we came down to year 28 at the bottom of that page, and then we get year 29 and year 30, Omri. That was Ahab's dynasty, house of Omri. Okay, we get years 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, and let's just speed up, 37, 38, 39. Okay. We got to figure out, focus. There, we push that button to make it focus. Okay, so Jehu. Okay, but they didn't turn away from the idolatry of Jeroboam. Okay, so we have your 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. Okay, flip over the page here. Year 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54. Okay. Notice there's no king on Israel, but they're still accounted as idolatrous here for a number of years. There's a regency. All right. 55, 56. 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 62, 63. Okay, and you see the orange column counting up to 390 there. And we see that Hezekiah's reformation happens, and we stop counting years for the sin of Israel. And the reason is because the scripture specifically said that Hoshea, son of Elah, was not as wicked as the other kings of Israel. And he allowed, when Hezekiah sent messengers to the northern kingdom to invite them to the feast, they responded and came to the feast. So the 390 years of the sin of Israel stop with Hezekiah's Passover. Okay. And then they're carried off here by the king of Assyria. Okay, so now we're going to look to start counting years for the sin of Judah, but of course during the reign of Hezekiah, they were righteous, so there aren't any to count. Okay. 7, 28, 29. Let's see, where are we? Oh, okay, just a minute. I've got to find out where I'm at here. Hezekiah. Okay, that's the green column. Okay. 29 years for him. There we go. And then we have Manasseh. Okay, so now Manasseh was a wicked king during the first part of his reign before he repented. So from this, we get 25 years of iniquity, and we also get year 64, 65, and 66, and 67 of the unobserved sabbatical years. And we know from archaeology and ancient Near Eastern history when he was taken by the Babylonians and when he repented, so we know when that time period ends. That also syncs up with Isaiah 7:8. Okay. So, for the remainder of his reign, he served the Lord, and so we accordingly don't count any years. We don't count up the sabbatical years during then. But his son, Ammon, was wicked. He reigned for 2 years, and 1 sabbatical year landed during there. So we have to count it, 68. And then Josiah was a righteous king. So we don't count up anything during his reign. All right. So Josiah runs off the end of the page. And his son Jehoahaz was evil, but he didn't have any sabbatical years next to him. Jehoiakim was evil. So, year 69 here being counted in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim. Okay. And then we're going to come across year 70 right here. And this is when Jehoiakim was taken in exile to Babylon. This is when the Babylonian exile begins. So as soon as we count year 70 there, okay, then as soon as the exile begins, we start counting 1, 2, 3 for 70 years of exile in Babylon. So that's the 70th sabbatical year, and that's where the 70 years come from. That's the basis of this 70-year exile. Okay, so flip the screen around here and I'll just give you a little commentary context here before we end this video, and that is that knowing where these sabbatical years are not only helps us understand biblical chronology and its accuracy, and that the text means exactly what it says when it's talking about the land Sabbath they didn't observe, but also gives us a context and background for Daniel chapter 9, okay, and for Daniel's 77s. Why are the 77s broken up into 7 sevens, 62 sevens, and 1 7? And it leaves, since the 77s are cut out for Israel and Judah, okay, and since the 70 years were based on broken sabbatical years collected from here and there during the rebellions of Israel, the possibility arises that the same thing is happening with Daniel's 77s. Okay, so the 7 sevens and 62 sevens actually do join up with one another. But since Israel rejected Messiah and, and killed him, after that, there's a gap before the 70th seven, before the kingdom comes. All right, before the kingdom is restored to Israel. Now, if you look at the prophecy, you will see that in the 77s was the period to restore everlasting righteousness to Israel, to finish transgression and iniquity, to anoint the most holy place. So all these things haven't happened yet in this period. And if you look after the 62 sevens in Daniel 9, you will see that it says, and then the city and the sanctuary will be destroyed. Okay, so, but by the end of the prophecy, it's all going to be restored. So this happened in AD 70, and there's no way to stretch the prophecy out. You would run out of years before AD 70, so you'd have to have a gap if you're going to take the prophecies given in Daniel 9 in sequence. Okay, in other words, the mention of the destruction of the city has to come before the 70th seven, because obviously in the 70th seven, the temple is operating again, and of course that is still future. So that's why understanding the pattern of the 77s within the 390 years of sin for Israel and the 390 years of sin for Judah is important. So when you see this, you will understand why it's not problematic to have a gap in counting up the time of the clock. Now, there's one other thing I want to mention here, and that's that the Babylonian exile clock has also stopped. So it's not just the 77s that stopped, or the counting of them in the original years in the first place that started and stopped. But the Babylonian exile, not the exile, the Babylonian hegemony, because the prophecy says all these nations would serve the king of Babylon 70 years. Well, when the Persians took over Babylon, it was after 66 and a half years, okay, and 539 BC. Okay, the Persians took over. So there's actually still 3.5 years left before Babylon becomes an everlasting desolation. And the archaeologists know that Babylon went into slow decline, and the bricks of the city were used in other cities, and there's still ruins. There's still bricks of Babylon where Babylon was. Okay, there's still archaeological remains there. It hasn't become a total and complete desolation yet. And so there's a time period in the future, which is talked about in the book of Revelation, when Babylon will be restored. So that 70 years of hegemony for Babylon is also a clock prophecy that's been stopped after 66 and a half years. Just like the Daniel 9 prophecy was stopped after the 7 sevens and 62 sevens. Okay, just like the counting up of the original land Sabbaths they didn't observe started when they rebelled and stopped when they repented, and started when they rebelled and stopped when they repented. So once you see this overall pattern in Scripture, then you will begin to understand the method behind the biblical prophecies here. All right, thank you for listening. This is Daniel Gregg, over and out.